We got churches here in, I'll sit here right now. Hi.
Hi.
We've got churches from the LA area, well, actually from San Diego up to Santa Barbara.
Okay.
We've been working together in a called Multiplying Church Cohort. This is our third meeting, and everyone is working on some projects to help push them down the road in their churches. Also kind of emphasizing their small groups, or well, that's kind of the main one. Most are working in some kind of emphasizing their small group systems. We're talking this time about developing our leadership pipeline. And so with your work at Community Christian as a campus leader, as part of the New Thing Network, we wanted to let you kind of walk us through the whole idea of how do we develop this leadership pipeline and help move our churches forward. So we put your outline up on a chalkboard here. So we've got, okay. We'll just let you take it until you get through that, and then we'll end with some questions and answers. Just really pleased for you to be here.
Thanks.
I'd like to go ahead and start us with a prayer this morning, and then turn it over to you.
Love it.
So, Father, just thank you for a good night's sleep, for this beautiful place, for a day that has calmed down, and a chance for us to be together and just consider how to encourage each other towards good works and kingdom expansion. Bless Eric this morning. Thank you for all the opportunity and experience that he brings with him. We want to listen well, learn well from him, be blessed by him, and in turn, bless him back. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks. All right. So who in the room is a small groups director? Like, you oversee small group ministry? Raise your hand. Anybody in the room a campus pastor in a multi-site church? Raise your hand. Who here are all like lead pastors? You oversee churches? Raise your hand. Who is not raising their hand? Give me a shout out for like your role. So the gentleman with the hat on, go ahead.
Youth minister.
Youth minister. Who? Anybody else? Elder? Worship and arts? Okay, cool. That helps me just kind of know who's in the room. Well, first of all, thanks for letting me be here. I apologize if technology doesn't let us engage as effectively as I would like to. I am a very extroverted, social, let's stay up late, tell stories, and laugh together kind of guy. That's what I like to do, and technology doesn't always afford us that. And if I bump in and out sound-wise, I want to apologize in advance for that. You know, technology doesn't always support great audio and great video. So if at any point things aren't coming through clear, I just expect that Stan will jump in. He has my cell phone number, and we'll just get on the phone and do it that way. But we'll do technology for as long as it takes us to what we need to get to. My goal is to give you a whole bunch of information, and that by, let's say 11:30, I'll stop, and then we'll do some Q&A, give you guys a chance to ask some questions about what we're up to with New Thing and community. So let me just kind of briefly paint for you the picture of community and New Thing. And before I do that, who here has read the book Exponential? By show of hands. All right, so this will be a bit of a refresher of that particular book. What Exponential was for us, it was really just telling the story of community and New Thing. And I've had the privilege of being at community now for almost 17 years. I came as an intern. I was newly married. My wife and I had only been married for a year, and I came to community when it was 2 locations as a church that was getting after multi-site. We stumbled upon multi-site kind of by accident. It really was a God thing. A real estate developer found his way back to God at our church. He felt this kind of nagging desire to give us a building, and we said yes to that. Who doesn't want to take free buildings? And he had this idea of us relocating to a different neighborhood. We thought that's crazy because our people are from this area. And he said, well, why don't you do it in both areas? And that's how we kind of accidentally fell upon multi-site. God used someone early on in their spiritual journey to lead us towards that. And it's been a fun ride ever since. So we went multi-site. What became one church, 2 locations. We were running about 700 or so at that time. And then after that, we kind of caught the bug, and we just wanted to keep multi-siting. So we launched a location in a gated community of 55 and older. That was not a demographic that we were used to. I was 25 at the time, and I launched the small group ministry there. My two apprentice leaders were 60 and 65 years of age, and I was developing them to become leaders to launch small groups to launch this new campus. That was an awesome experience, great experience for me as a young leader, and it was just fun all the way around. Then we launched our next location in Montgomery, Illinois. That was what now has become common language, a church merger. It was a church that was closing down. There was about a dozen people left in it. And they asked if we'd be willing to relaunch them as a campus of Community Christian Church. They gave us their building. They gave what was left in their checking account, and they gave us the land. And we launched as a new campus. It went from 12 people to 600 when we kicked off. And I was on that launch team. I was the small groups guy for that particular launch. And since that time, that campus has planted and started about a half dozen new churches and campuses out of that particular campus. That led us to 4 locations as a multi-site church, which is when we began to feel kind of the organizational tug of how we were organized as a very centralized church. And we started kind of looking at different kinds of models, exploring what other multi-site churches were doing. There weren't very many in the country that were beyond 4 locations. And so it forced us to kind of just start thinking outside the box and to innovate some new structures and strategies, which you can read about in Exponential. We eventually went from 4 to 6 locations, 6 to 8, 8 to now 12 locations across Chicago. What's pretty unique about us that's happened in the last 3 years is that we went from the suburbs of Chicago, which if you know the city of Chicago, it's about 10 million people, but 3 million of those people live in the actual city of Chicago. And my wife and I and our 3 kids, we relocated from the suburbs to the city to move downtown, which if you're familiar with Chicago, it's like moving into an entirely different country. Most people do not move from the suburbs to the city. It's very common for the opposite to happen. So we really felt like God was calling us to be missionaries and to launch a community into downtown Chicago. And so we live now on the north side of Chicago in Lincoln Park. Any Chicago Cubs fans? Come on. Yeah? No? Yeah? No? Anyway, so I'm a Chicago Cub fan. So we moved to the north side of the city into Lincoln Park, and we launched Community's newest location in downtown Chicago. It's been a fun ride. It's completely different than any campus I've ever launched. I've worked in startup land. I've worked in a senior community. I have worked at the largest location of Community, which is over a couple thousand. And now here I am in downtown Chicago, just trying to figure out what it looks like to do urban ministry in an area that's highly unchurched. It's less than 10% churched. That was the highest stat that we could find. And there's just so much need here. It's ridiculous. Lincoln Park, where we're located, is an affluent community. It's incredibly resourced, and people have no interest in church. So to break through that mold and that ice has been incredibly difficult, but we've seen a lot of fruit. We've seen over a couple dozen baptisms since we started. We have about 15 small groups. We average about 150 people right now. And we're on a tremendous growth curve, and I expect to see us well over a couple hundred within the next 12 to 24 months. A lot of very good things going on, but it's been an incredible challenge just because it's completely different than launching in suburbia. And if you've ever planted a church in an urban context or pastored a church in an urban context, you would know that. About a decade ago, Community stumbled upon church planting almost around the same time we stumbled upon multi-siting. And we had a gentleman on staff who was our student ministry guy, and he felt this call to plant a new church in Denver, Colorado. And that really began our kind of church planting attitude, because rather than just kind of kick him out on the curb and let him do his own thing, we decided to celebrate it. And we brought the student ministry guy up front, and we said, hey, some of you are supposed to go with him, and we want to be a church planting church, and we would like to support this church plant. 40 people moved from Chicago to Denver to start that new church, and we were able to launch Jacob's Well in Denver, Colorado. And that really began New Thing, which is our church planting network. And that actually was something that I directed for a number of years, had the opportunity to lead New Thing to double and grow over the next 3 years, and then eventually transition from that to launch this campus that I lead here now in downtown Chicago. I'm kind of what you might call a serial starter. I love the new. I love raising up leaders, love the opportunity to be on the ground floor of something new, which is why I got attracted to New Thing and loved doing that. It had me traveling quite a bit. which was a bit of a challenge with a young family. And so I chose to kind of step away from that in this season and to lead a local church, a campus of Community Christian Church. New Thing itself is about, I think it's 270 churches globally right now. We have about 230 leadership residents in training to plant new churches. A leadership resident is an apprentice church planter. There's somebody that's in preparation to start a new church. And we have those all across the globe. And you can go to newthing.org if you'd like to see more about what New Thing is and how we're organizing networks to launch new churches all across the globe. That's just kind of a brief snapshot of Community Christian Church and New Thing, which is our church planting network. But really all of this growth and multiplication has come through this apprenticeship strategy that we're pretty passionate about. It's something that Dave and John instilled in the DNA of community from the very beginning, that was really inspired by not only scripture, but also by a gentleman named Carl George, who has written a number of books back in the 90s. He was a church consultant for church growth, and he emphasized the value of apprenticeship through the 9 keys of effective small group leadership. I, in fact, was just looking at another book that he wrote, How to Break Growth Barriers, Prepare Your Church for the Future, This Coming Church Revolution. Like, all those books were written by Carl George, and he really was the guy that came alongside of churches like Willow Creek and said, hey, like, you guys have a pretty fantastic vision here. There's some church growth strategies that you can implement that I've seen in other parts of the globe that will help you continue to grow as a church. And it was these spans of care models that he really looked at from Exodus 18, if you've ever heard of the Jethro model, which was really Jethro coming to Moses and him saying, you're doing too much by yourself. You need to organize things in a way that allows for leaders to raise up. And Carl took those principles and helped introduce them to the church in North America. And now you see churches all across the U.S. that have these large infrastructures allow for them to continue to grow and multiply. And that care structure plus the apprenticeship model that he talks about in 9 keys of effective small group leadership really is what informed community and how to develop a care structure that allowed for us to continue to grow and multiply.